What's up YouTube, it's your boy Nash here, welcome back to the channel, and today I've got another deck profile for you guys, and it's actually my updated DDD deck that I've actually been wanting to update for a while. I know that was been like, what, maybe a couple months? Let me look back on my fire stick. I think it was like the last couple of months. Let's take a look. I'm looking on my fire stick right now, just as a heads up. Actually, it was about almost 2 months ago. Excuse me, that I did the deck, and it was a bit different compared to this one because the original one, the last one I did, was a bit unique, so to speak. But this one's actually pretty good. This one is actually pretty good. It's a lot better. So, sorry guys, I'm really tired right now. It's literally 8:30 in the morning, and it's foggy as fuck outside, or rather, it's cloudy as fuck. It's a lot better than the last one, because the last one was more of a beatdown style. Now, this one's more of a control. It's more of a control style, and you can, and with this deck, you could get about five, maybe 6 negates on board, depending on who goes first or second. So, hopefully you guys enjoy this deck profile. Excuse me, if you guys do enjoy it and you guys want to see more deck profiles in the future, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and make sure you guys turn on the notification bell so you guys do not miss out. And make sure you guys follow me on Twitter and Instagram. The links will be in the description. And if you guys want to send me fan mail for you guys, and you guys want me to open it up on the channel, my address will also be in the description as well. And let's get straight into it. First up, we have the one copy, the obvious one copy of Go Triple D Divine Zero King Rage, which looks like Declan for hilarious reasons. This card is actually pretty good in this style because for one, its pendulum scale is 0. The only other card in this deck the only cards in this deck that have a scale of 10 are Double D Savant Newton and Savant Kepler. With these two together, with Kepler and Rage, or Rage and Newton, that's instantly levels 1 through 9. And because that the deck is mostly like 8-star, 9-star, 10 stars, you're pretty much just off to the races there, and it basically helps you go into your synchro plays, even your Xyz plays, even your Link plays, if need be. So this card is actually pretty good. But what's also cool is that its pendulum effect basically prevents you from being dealt any damage, and also it has another effect where it says if you normal summon a level 5 or higher Double D monster, you can do it without tributing. You can only use each pendulum effect once per turn. So because that we have cards like Savant Galilei, Thomas, Newton, and even also Vice Typhoon, which I'll explain that later on in the video. You don't have it's basically ancient rules in the form of a pendulum, which is pretty cool. Now sorry guys, I had something caught in my tongue. Anyway, now for its monster effect. When this card declares an attack, if your opponent's life points is 4,000 or less, you can make this card gain attack equal to your opponent's life points until the end of the turn. Cannot be destroyed by battle. Also, you take no damage from battles involving this card. You contribute one of the monster, apply one of these effects until the end of the turn. This card can attack directly. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in the spell and trap zones. Your opponent cannot activate cards in their hand or grave. So what's cool about this is that this card basically just stops. This card can basically stop Ash Blossom if you're about to activate cards, a card like, say, Allure of Darkness, 1/1, or even also Contract with the Gate. This card basically negates just stops the Ash Blossom dead in its tracks, which is really, really good. Next up, we have the one copy of Triple D Destiny King Zero Lapras. This card is actually pretty nuts. So its pendulum effect. So its pen skill is 1, which is actually pretty good, especially if you want to go into just monsters from 2 to 9 or 2 to 8. That's actually pretty good. So its pen effect reads: during your main phase, you can add 1 face-up Triple D Pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand. So with that alone, it's basically extra deck Rhoda, so to speak, which is actually kind of funny, but so good. Obviously, except this card. You can only use this effect once per turn. So again, it's like extra deck Rhoda. So if you have this in the Pendulum Zone, you can basically add Kepler back to your hand, normal summon it, and then just then just go off with that. Just go off with Kepler, activate Kepler's effect, add Dark Contract with the Gate, trigger, activate the gate, and you can instantly Rhoda out your Swirl Slime, which is a polymerization for the deck, which is really good. But its monster effect, Lapras' monster effect is nuts. You can special summon this card from your hand by attributing 1 Triple D monster. That's it. Before damage count, if this card battles an opponent's monster, you can activate this effect. This card's attack becomes double that opponent's monster's original attack until the end of the damage step. If this card attacks a defense position monster, battle damage, piercing battle is inflicted. The first time this card will be destroyed by battle each turn, it is not, and you take no damage from that battle. So, it basically has the Mad Sword Beast effect, which is just nuts. Plus, it's a Megamorph. It's basically a Megamorph right off the bat, which is just insane, which is really, really, really good. Plus with Swirl Slime and Lapras, you can easily go into cards like Flame, High King Genghis, or even also Oblivion Ragnarok, funny enough, which is actually pretty good. Which is really, really good. Next up, we have, speaking of Oblivion Ragnarok, we have Triple D Oblivion King Abyss Ragnarok, which is quite the beast. It is quite the beast. So if you guys have, its pen skill is 5, which is fairly decent. Fairly decent. If you want to just go into the 6-star plays, it's fairly decent. But its pendulum effect says, if you special summon a double D monster, except during the damage step, you can target a DD monster in your grave. You can target 1 double D monster in your grave. Any damage your opponent takes becomes half for the rest of the turn. Also special summon that monster. If you do, take 1,000 damage. What's cool about this is that if you have this in the pen zone, and you have Triple D Oracle King Dark, you're not taking damage. You're gaining it. You're gaining the life points. Because Oracle King Dark's effect reads, any effect that would inflict damage to you makes you gain that much life points instead. So with this, it's as if you're summoning. So it's as if you're reborning your activate a Monster Reborn effect for free, which is just absolutely insane. Obviously, yes, the damage your opponent takes does get cut in half, but that really doesn't matter because once you activate Abyss Ragnarok's effect, you're pretty much just gonna be making a board where you can have Dark, High King Genghis, High King Alexander, just to name a few. That would be your board. Honesty King, Des Machina. That right there would would that right there would be a board, and your opponent would have no outs to it, which is just insane. But its monster effect is where it gets really tricky. If this card is normal special summon, you could target a DD. You could target one Triple D monster you grave, special summon it. So it's basically a double reborn, which is really cool. You can only use this effect once per turn. Once per turn, you contribute one other DD monster target a monster your opponent controls, banish it. So not only is this a monster reborn as a as a spell, or rather, I guess in the Pendulum Zone, but in the Monster Zone, it's a monster reborn and a bottomless trap hole. Not much else to say about that. Not much else to say about that, guys. Trust me. I just don't have the words for it. That card's a house. It is a house. Next up, we have the one copy of Triple D Chaos King Apocalypse. This card, absolutely insane. Banish 2 DD monsters from your grave. Special summon this card from your Pendulum Zone. So it is unfortunate that you have to banish 2 of your monsters, but when you do summon it, you're able to trigger off its monster effect, which reads during your opponent's turn, if this card is in your hand or grave, you can target 2 face-up spells or traps you control. You cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn, except fiends. Also destroy the targeted cards if you do special summon this card, which is a quick effect. You only use this effect once per turn. So obviously it's a Cyber Dragon effect, but you're also able to destroy the two back rows. So it's kind of like a Twin Twister. It's a Twin Twister Cyber Dragon, which is absolutely insane. Now for two additions to the deck. First up, we have the one copy of Double D Orthros. You guys are wondering, what is this card? If you guys have never seen this card before, it's a 4-star Dark Fiend Pendulum Tuner with 600 attack and 1800 defense. Its Pendulum skill is 3, and its Pendulum effect reads, once per turn, you can target one spell or trap on the field, and one other Double D or Dark Contract card you control, destroy them. So it's basically a... So it's basically a twin twister of sorts, which is not too bad. It's not too bad. Not too shabby of an effect, but its monster effect is actually kind of weird. It's kind of weird. When you take battle or effect damage, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned to your field, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except for fiends. Yes, you are locked into so many cards, so many fiends, but to be fair, your extra deck, for the most part, are all fiends. The only other monster that's not a fiend in this deck, or rather in the extra deck to be fair, is Baron de Fleur. And I'll explain why I am running this card in the deck, but I do want to give a shout out to my boy Shadow Realm Yu-Gi-Oh for this idea, because his build actually runs Orthros, and this other one, Double D Cerberus, which I'll explain here in a second, and his deck is just nuts. If you guys have not checked out that deck, I highly recommend you check out the deck and notice the difference between his and mine, because with mine's more of a control style. His is more of a just a straight up beatdown. So this is more of a beatdown control. So with this deck, with this version, you want to try and control the tempo of the game, and try to just go for game, basically. So I took his idea. You guys know, when it comes to Shadow Realm's ideas, I always take his ideas, and I put my own spin on them, because that right there, because by putting my own spin on his versions, I try to make the deck a little bit more a little more better, a little more consistent, if you will. So, big shout-outs to my boy Realm Yu-Gi-Oh! For the deck idea. If you guys have not checked him out, be sure to check him out on his YouTube channel. Big shout-outs to him, and big shout-outs to him on Twitter. I think his @name is @Realm Yu-Gi-Oh! So, or at Realm YGO. So, big shout-outs to him, but that being said, moving on, we do have the one copy of Double D Cerberus. This card is actually pretty crazy in this deck. So if you guys have never seen this card before, it's a 4-star Dark Fiend Pendulum with 1600 attack and 600 defense. So it's kind of similar to similar to Orthros, but it's a little bit better. Excuse me. Its pen skill is 6. And its pendulum effect reads, once per turn, you can target one Double D monster you control. Change its level to 4. If you do, it gains 400 attack and defense, even if this card leaves the field. So what's cool about this is that you can target a card like say Lapras and be able to just deal damage. And what's even more funny is that if you're just a few hundred points shy of lethal, this card basically just ensures that you get lethal on board, which is just insane. It is insane. Its monster effect reads, when this card is pendulum summoned from the hand while you control a Double D monster other than this card, you can target one continuous spell in your grave, add it to your hand. It's Graveyard Rhoda. So you can basically add Dark Contract with the Gate back to your hand, activate it, and just go from there, which is just which is absolutely insane. Next up, we have 3 copies of Double D Griffin. This is actually one of the new cards that'll be coming out of Battle of Chaos, if I remember correctly. So I have talked about this and a few other cards before that are in this deck on the channel. But if you guys are new and have never seen this card before, it is a 4-star Dark Fiend Pendulum with 1200 attack and defense, and pen skill is 1. Its pendulum effect reads, you can target one Fiend monster you control, it gains 500 attack for each Dark Contract spell trap with different names you control and in your graveyard until the end of the turn. Then destroy this card. You can only use this effect once per turn. So basically, with this, you can target a card I'll say Flame King Genghis, which has 2000 attack. If you have let's say Dark Contract with the Gate, Swamp King, Dark Contract Document, and I'll say Eternal Darkness on the field or in the graveyard, that's what? 1, 2, 3, 4? That's an additional 2000 attack. Basically, Flame King Genghis' effect will go up to 4000 right off the bat, which is just insane. But its monster effect is actually pretty crazy. If you control a Double D monster, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position. If this card is Pendulum Summoned, you can discard one Double D or Dark Contract card, draw one card. If this card is special summoned from the grave, you can add a Double D card from your deck to your hand except this card. You can only use each effect once per turn. So basically it acts as a Cyber Dragon, but if it's Pendulum Summon, you basically get to, it's basically a Dark World Dealings where you draw one, you discard one. But if it was special summon from the graveyard off of the effects of say a Monster Reborn, you basically get to Stratos one of your monsters, one of your DD cards from your deck directly to your hand. So in this case you could add cards like Savant Kepler, Orthro, Cerberus, Lamia. You can even also add cards like Swirl Slime, Necro Slime, Ghost, Berfomet, which all those I'm actually running in the deck, which is just insane. And then you can just pop off there, and you'll still be able to make your board and be able to go for games. So this card is really, really good. Now for the Double D Savants. Now each of them has their own unique effect. So I'm running So I'm running 2 copies of Savant Galilei, 1 Thomas, 1 Newton, triple Copernicus, and triple Kepler. Galilei's pendulum effect reads you cannot pen summon monsters except double D monsters. This effect cannot be negated. Once per turn during your standby phase, increase this card's pendulum scale by 2, max 10. Then destroy all monsters you control with a level less than or equal to this card's pen scale, except DD monsters. So with this, because that it'll go up to 11, you can basically just summon pretty much any scale, any monster you want with King Rage and Galilei. That's insane. So that's what. Let's see. I believe goes a 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so with this, you can basically summon pretty much any of your double D or triple D monsters right off the bat, and you're basically able to combo off just off of Galilei and King Rage alone, if need be, which is just incredible, absolutely incredible. Now, it's monster effect is where it's really tricky. During either player's turn, you can discard this card, then target 1 double D or Dark Contract card you control, return it to the hand. So it acts as sort of like a compulse for either the front lines or the back row, and you can basically just not be dealt damage. So if you target the back row and you target, like, say, Dark Contract with the gate, you jump it back to your hand. Next turn you won't take the 1,000, but if you target the front lines and target I'll say DD Griffin, you compulse it back to your hand, and you would still be taking damage off of gate. But if you have Oracle King Dark on the field, you're not taking any damage. You're gaining the life points anyway. So that's actually pretty cool. Savant Thomas is kind of a weird one. So Thomas's pendulum effect reads: during your main phase, you can add 1 face-up double D pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn, so it acts as like a graveyard Rhoda, if you will, which is pretty cool. So it's kind of similar to Destiny King Zero Lapis, but it's a little bit different, especially with its monster effect, which reads: you can target 1 double D card in your pendulum zone, destroy that card, and if you do, special summon a level 8 triple D monster from your deck in defense position, but for the rest of the turn, its effects, if any, are negated, and any battle damage your opponent takes becomes half. You can only use this effect once per turn. So in this case, you can summon Ragnarok to your field in defense, in which case it becomes a 3,000. It becomes a 3,000 ass, basically. It becomes a 3,000 ass, and your opponent, and there's not a whole lot of cards that can out a 3,000 ass like Ragnarok, which is kind of crazy. But it's still pretty crazy. It's still pretty good, to say the very least. Now for Newton. Newton is kind of a weird one. Obviously, it does have the pen skill of 10, but its pendulum effect reads: you cannot pen summon monsters except double D monsters. This effect cannot be negated. So it's similar to Galilei, but the other effect is different. This while this card is in your pen zone, you can negate an activated trap effect that would inflict damage to you, then destroy this card. So if your opponent were to activate a card like, say, Ring of Destruction, the effect would be negated right off the bat, and you wouldn't take any damage, which is just pretty nice to say the very least. Its monster effect reads: you can discard this card, then target 1 double D or Dark Contract card in your grave, except this card, add it to your hand. So it's basically Graveyard Rhoda, which is really cool. But what's cool about this is that because that it's a 7-star, it's a perfect target to summon Flame High King Genghis by fusing Newton with Swirl Slime, in which case you could summon a card like, say, Kepler you would trigger Kepler's effect Chainlink 1, High King Genghis effect Chainlink 2 as Chainlink 2. High King Genghis effect acts as a Monster Reborn. It acts as a Monster Reborn to summon back, I'll say, Abyss Ragnarok, let's say that, and then Kepler's effect would trigger, and you could add Dark Contract with the gate. By doing it in that chain, yes it does allow Ghost Bell to trigger, but it locks your opponent from activating Ash Blossom because Kepler has the search effect that because Kepler's effect searches from the deck, which is the exact play that you want. If you do it the other way around, you will lock Bell from triggering, but Ash Blossom will come into play. So you want to try and make Kepler as Chainlink 1, and then the Reborn effect of High King Genghis, which is something that you actually want. Now, the triple Copernicus is actually kind of a cool one because even though its pen skill is 1, its pen effect reads pretty much the same as Godlight and Newton. You cannot pen summon monsters except Double D monsters, and this effect cannot be negated. Once while this card is in your pen zone, you can negate and activate a spell that will inflict damage to you, then destroy this card. So basically, Newton would negate traps. Copernicus would negate spells, which is pretty cool. Its monster effect though is pretty much the same as Newton, where it says if this card is normal special summon, you can send a double D or Dark Contract card from your deck to the grave, except this card. So what's cool about Newton is that so what's cool about Newton is that it acts as Graveyard Rhoda. Copernicus acts as a Foolish Burial, which is really cool. And then, of course, the last of the savants, we've got Triple Kepler, which its pen effect, which its pen effect reads: you cannot pen summon monsters except DD monsters. This effect cannot be negated once per turn while during your standby phase. Reduce this card's pendulum scale by 2, minimum 1, then destroy all monsters you control with a level greater than or equal to this card's pen scale except DD monsters. Its monster effect is what you want to see the most. If this card is normal special summon, you can activate one of these effects. You can only use this effect once per turn. Target one other DD card or Dark Contract. Target one other DD card you control, return it to the hand. Add a Dark Contract card from your deck to your hand. So you basically want to just add the Dark Contract to your hand, which is what you want to do the most. Now for Double D Vice Typhoon. If you guys have never seen this card before, it's a 7-star. It's a 7-star Dark Fiend with 2300 attack and 2800 defense. Its effect reads: when this card is normal summon, you can tribute one DD monster, special summon a level 7 Triple D monster from your deck. In which case, Chaos King Apocalypse is the only target. You can fusion summon a level 8 or higher Triple D fusion from your extra deck by banishing the fusion materials listed on it from your graveyard, including this card. You can only use each effect once per turn. So it's basically Necro Slime, but in the form of a 7-star monster, which is pretty cool. This is basically a way for you to this basically helps you this can basically help you go into Abyss to King Caesar Ragnarok, because you could actually use because you can use him and I'll say Oblivion Abyss Ragnarok to summon Caesar Ragnarok, which is just absolutely insane. So it acts as a polymerization, just like Swirl Slime and Necro Slime. It's pretty crazy. Now for Double D Baphomet, only one copy, which is a 4-star Dark Fiend with 1400 attack and 1800 defense. Its effect reads, once per turn, you can target one DD monster you control that has a level except DD Baphomet, except this card, and declare a level from 1 to 8. It becomes that level until the end of the turn. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except Double D monsters. So what's cool about this is that this can help you. This can actually help you go into cards like cards like Wave King Caesar, which is so damn good. I think Noon is a 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, but yeah, so it can help you. It can help you basically go into cards like Don King Caliuga, Guts King Alexander, just several other cards. It is so good. You can even also change Kepler into a level 6, which would help you overlay it and Flame King Genghis to summon Wave High King Caesar, which is absolutely incredible. Next up, we have the one copy of Double D Ghost. This card is just absolutely nuts. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one Double D monster or Dark Construct card in your grave, except this card, send a card from your deck to the grave with the same name. If this card is banished, you can target one of your banished Double D or monsters or Dark Construct cards, except this card, return it to the graveyard. So it has the Ciphering Lord Omega effect, where basically you can take a card from your banished pile, put it back into the graveyard, which is just absolutely pretty cool. And plus, it's a tuner. It can help you go into cards like Curse King Siegfried, Guts King Alexander, even Super Doom King Bright Armageddon, which I'll explain why I'm running both it and Dark Armageddon in the extra deck. Next up, for the rest of the monsters, we got Double D Swirl Slime. This is basically your polymerization. And what's cool about this is that you can actually use both its first effect and second effect in the same turn. So with this, you can fusion summon one of your fusions using this card as the material, which is really good. Banish this card, special summon a card like say Kepler, which would then be Kepler Chainlink 1, High King Genghis Chainlink 2, which is what you want the most, and you're off to the races there. Now next up we have 2 copies of Necro Slime. I did have this at 3 with the last build, but I decided to stick with Shadow Realm's idea and keep it at 2. And the reason being is because of the fact that you already have the Vice Typhoon and the triple Swirl Slime. You don't need any more you don't need another poly. But what's cool about this is that the effect works. This effect works when it's in the graveyard, and Copernicus basically can help you. So if you normal summon the Copernicus, you can trigger it. You can trigger its effect, activate to send the Necro Slime to the grave, activate Necro Slime's effect, banish it and another monster you may have, and you're off to the races there, which is just absolutely pretty fucking crazy. Next up, we have and then to round out the monsters, we have 2 copies of Double D Lamia. This card is so crazy. So if you guys have never seen this card before, it's a 1-star Dark Fiend tuner with 100 attack and 1900 defense, and its effect reads: if this card is in your hand or grave, you could send one Double D or Dark Contract card from your hand or face up from your field to the grave. Except this card, special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field. Yeah, you are going to be doing a lot of banishing, but there is a way you can bring it back. There's a way you can bring your dark monsters back into the graveyard. There's only one, and it's not Ciphering Lord Omega. Yes, it does do that, but there is another way. Doomsday Horror. This card, absolutely insane. This card was released in Phantom Darkness. Was it Phantom Darkness? Yeah, I believe Phantom Darkness. So if you guys have never seen this card before, it's a 4-star Dark Fiend with question mark attack and defense. Its effect reads, this card's attack and defense are equal to the number of banished dark monsters times 300. If this card is destroyed and sent to the grave, return all banished dark monsters to the graveyard. This will give you fodder. This will help you go even deeper into your plays and help you make your board really fast, which is just absolutely incredible. Moving on into the spells, we have two copies of Allure. I did with Shadow Realms version. He had it at 3. I decided to put it at 2 because you don't want to do a whole lot of banishing, because you're already going to be doing a lot of banishing off of cards like Ghost and Swirl Slime, Necro Slime, and Lamia. So don't really want to do a whole lot of banishing because you only have one Doomsday Horror. So you want to try and minimize the banishing as much as possible. But still, Allure of Darkness, it's a pot of greed. You can't go wrong with that. 1 for 1, not much else to say about that. Monster Reborn, not much else to say about that. Called by the Grave, not much to say about that. Literally, they're self-explanatory. Triple copies of Dark Contract with the Gate. This card is actually pretty cool. This card is pretty cool. So, what's cool about this is that it's basically Rhoda. It's basically Rhoda. So it says, during your main phase, you can add 1 double D monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. Once per turn during your standby phase, take 1,000 damage. If you have Oracle King Dark on the field, you don't have to be. You don't get dealt damage. You just gain the life points instead. Dark Contract with the Swamp King, only 1 copy. So this is kind of a weird one. So it says, during your main phase, you can fusion summon a Fiend type fusion from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as the material. You can only use this effect once per turn. If summoning a double D fusion monster this way, you can also banish monsters from your grave as the material. Once per turn, during the standby, you take 1,000 damage. So basically, you have 1, 4, 6, 7. You basically have 7 ways to go into cards like Caesar Ragnarok, High King Genghis, and even also a card that's in the side deck, which I'll explain a little later on, which is just absolutely pretty crazy. Then of course we've got the field spell, the City of Patented of the City of Patent Dark Contract Documents. This card is absolutely crazy. If your opponent special summons a monster or monsters of the same type, fusion, synchro, exceeds link as a triple D monster you control, except during the damage step, you can activate this effect, inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. Also, they cannot special summon monsters of the same type as that summoned monster for the rest of this turn. While this card is face up on the field. If this card is sent to the grave, you can add a double D monster from your grave or face up extra deck to your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. So basically, it's a way to lock your opponent out of the extra deck. So it's kind of like its own Buster Locks, so to speak, which is absolutely pretty crazy. And then moving on into the traps, we've got the 1 copy of Dark Contract with the Eternal Darkness. This card is just absolutely crazy. While you have 2 double D cards in your pendulum zones, your opponent cannot target monsters on the field with spell or trap effects, tribute them for a tribute summon, nor use them as material for a fusion, synchro, or exceed summon. Once per turn during the standby phase, take 1,000 damage. So, again, it's basically another form of the Buster Lock. So you basically have two ways to lock your opponent out of summoning cards from the extra deck, which is just absolutely incredible. Next, and then to round out the main deck, we have the 1 copy of Triple D Head Hunt. This card, absolutely crazy. If you control a Triple D monster, target a face-up monster your opponent controls, take control of it until the end phase of the next turn, but its effects are negated. It cannot declare an attack. Also, if it was special summoned from the extra deck, it is treated as a Triple D monster. You can only activate 1 Head Hunt per turn. So this basically is your Snatch Steal for the deck, which will help you go into cards like Don Don King Caliuga. It can help you go into Wave King Caesar depending on the monster. It is absolutely crazy. And then to round up the main deck, we've got the 2 Solemn Warning, because you don't want your opponent to do anything at all. Moving on into the extra deck, first up for the fusions, we've got Triple D Wave Oblivion King Caesar Ragnarok. It is absolutely nuts, absolutely crazy, and it's a 3200 beat stick, 3000 ass, and it requires 2 Triple D monsters. Once per turn, when an attack is declared involving this card, you can target one other DD or Dark Contract card you control, return it to the hand. If you do, equip 1 face-up monster your opponent controls to this card, except the battling monster. This card gains attack equal to the combined original attack of the monsters equipped to it by this effect. So not only is this a sort of like a compulse for the deck, it's also a relinquished, or I guess because it's a fusion, you could say that it's 1000 ice restrict, which is just absolutely crazy. I don't have to say anything else about it. Next up, we have Triple D Flame High King Genghis. This card is nuts. This card is nuts. If another double D monster is normal or special summon to your field while you control this monster, except during the damage step, you can target a DD monster in your grave, special summon. You can only use this effect once per turn. Once per turn, when a spell or trap or effect is activated, you can negate it. So this works against cards like Ash Blossom, Ghost Bell, cards like Twin Twister. It can even work against cards like Imperial Order, which is just absolutely crazy. Then, of course, we've got Oracle King Dark. I've said it before, you're gaining life points instead of taking the damage, off of your Dark Contract, so there you go. Not much else to say about that. And then, of course, we've got 2 copies of Triple D Flame King Genghis, the original. It's basically the same thing. Not much I'll say about it, but I'll read its effects anyway. If another DD monster is supposed to summon to your field while you control this face-up card, except during the damage step, you can target a DD monster in your grave, special summon it. You can only use the effect once per turn. Once per turn, if this card is destroyed by battle, or if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, target a Dark Contract card in your grave, add it to your hand. So High King Genghis is a Monster Reborn Solemn Judgment of sorts. Flame King Genghis is a Monster Reborn Graveyard Spell Trap Rhoda, which is really cool. Now for the synchros, there's 5 synchros in the extra deck. We've got Triple D Super Doom King Bright Armageddon. If you guys have never seen this card before, I believe this was released in Duelist Saga. I don't remember when this card was released, but it's I believe it's a 10. It's a 10, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Yeah. So it's a 10-star Dark Fiend Synchro Pendulum with 3,500 attack and 3,000 defense, and pen skill is 1. Its pendulum effect reads: once per turn, when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can target one DD synchro monster you control. Destroy as many monsters your opponent controls as possible with defense less than or equal to the targeted monster's attack. And if you do, inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. For each monster destroyed. So basically, you're dealing damage to your opponent, and you're destroying a lot of your opponent's monsters, which is really cool. Its monster effect, though, is pretty crazy, because the monster requires one DD tuner and a non-tuner Triple D monster, or monsters. Your opponent cannot target monsters you control with card effects. If another monster is normal supposed to summon while this monster is on the field, except during the damage step, you can make your opponent choose one pendulum monster they control, and all other monsters they currently control have their effects negated. If this card in the monster zone is destroyed, you can place this card in your pendulum zone. Now Dark Armageddon is a little bit different, because Dark Armageddon has basically the same attack and defense stats as as Bright Armageddon, but the requirements are different because the requirements is 2 level 8s. The pen skill is 1, and his effect reads: once per turn, if you have a double D card in your other Pendulum Zone, you can special summon 1 triple D Exceeds monster from your extra deck except this card. This will help you basically go into cards like Wave King Caesar, which is just absolutely insane. Which is just absolutely insane. And because you have a card like, say, hang on guys, something came up. There we go. So because that you have Xyz import in the side deck, Wave King Caesar is just even more powerful on its own, which is just absolutely crazy. Now for its monster effect, it says cannot be pendulum summon. When this card is Exceed summon, you can detach 1 face-up double D pendulum monster from your extra deck to this card, you can attach 1 face-up double D pendulum monster from your extra deck to this card. To this card's material. Pendulum monsters you control cannot be destroyed by card effects. Once per turn, you can detach a material from this card that target monster your opponent controls equal to the number of pendulum monsters that you control. Destroy them. If this card if this card in the monster zone is destroyed, place it in the pendulum zone. So basically, they work hand in hand, which is pretty cool. Absolutely insane. Next up, we have Triple D Gust High King Alexander. This card is just incredible. If 3 or more Triple D monsters are on the field, this card gains 3,000 attack. If another DD monster is normal special summon to your field while this monster is on the field, except during the damage step, it basically acts as a monster reborn, which is pretty cool. So not only is this a Megamorph, but it's also a monster reborn, which is really cool. Pretty awesome. Not much to say about that. Now for Baron de Flor. This card basically is an Omni Negate, which is what you need the most. But what's cool about this is its last effect. Once per turn during the standby phase, you can target a level 9 or lower monster in your grave, return this card to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon that monster. You can basically summon Vice Typhoon right off the bat, which is just absolutely incredible. But again, Baron is basically a Omni Negate, which is what you need the most in this deck, which is pretty cool. Now we have the 1 copy of Cursed King Siegfried. This card, I don't even know how to describe this card. During either player's turn, you can target a face-up, spell or trap on the field. That target has its effects negated until the next standby phase. So it acts as sort of like an imperm of sorts, which is really cool. Which is what you need the most, because of the fact that even though you've got the 2 copies of imperm in the side, you need Siegfried on the field as quickly as you can, so you can use its imperm effect right off the bat. You can only use this effect once per turn. If this card is destroyed by battle card effect sent to the grave, gain 1,000 life points for each Dark Contract card you control. So basically, if you have Dark Contract with the Gate, if you have Dark Contract with the Gate, Swamp King, and also Eternal Darkness, I thought that Dark Contract Documents counted as a Dark Contract card, but I don't think it does, which is kind of sad. You're basically gaining up to 3,000 attack, which is life points, which is pretty cool. Then of course, Gust King Alexander is basically High King Alexander, but it's a little bit different. If another DD monster is normal special summon to your field while you control this face-up card, except during the damage step, target a level 4 or lower DD monster in your grave and special summon. So it acts as a monster reborn, both for the monsters that are level 4 or lower, in which case, Orthros, Cerberus, Griffin, Copernicus, Kepler, Baphomet, Swirl Slime, Necro Slime, Lamia, they can be summoned right off the bat, which is pretty cool. Moving on into the Exceeds monsters, we have Triple D Amnesty King Des Machina. This card basically is a fucking house. It's a 3,000 beat stick and a 3000 ass, basically. Its pen effect says if you have a card in your other pendulum zone, you can target a pendulum monster you control, or in your graveyard, special summon the card to your other pendulum zone. Special summon the card in your other pendulum zone. If you do, place the targeted monster in your pendulum zone. You can only use this effect once per turn. Now, its monster effect reads, you can also exceed summon this card by using a Triple D monster you control as the material. Transfer its materials to this card. You can only control one Des Machina in your monster zone. Once per chain, when a monster card you control, your opponent controls, activates its effect as a quick effect. Detach two materials from this card, or destroy one dark contract card you control. And if you do, attach that opponent's card to this card as the material. So it acts as sort of like a, it's kind of like Silent Honor Arc, but for Triple Ds, which is pretty cool. Then of course we've got Dawn King Kali Yuga. If you summon this, your opponent will not be able to play any form of Yu-Gi-Oh, no matter what. So its effect reads, after this card is succeed summoned for the rest of this turn, other cards and their effects cannot be activated on the field, and other cards' effects on the field are negated. Once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach material from this card, destroy all spell and trap cards on the field. You can detach one material from this card, then target a dark contract spell in your grave. Set that target. So not only is this a Dark Ruler no more, but it's also a heavy storm and a sort of like a red reboot of sorts for the deck, which is pretty cool. And then of course we've got the Doom King Dark Armageddon. I already talked about it here earlier on in the video. Wave High King Caesar. This card, pretty nuts. When a spell trap or monster effect is activated that includes an effect that special summons a monster. More so, cards like Monster Reborn of sorts. As a quick effect, you can detach one material from this card, negate the activation. If you do, destroy that card. So it acts as sort of like a Solemn Judgment for the deck. Then you can make one other DD monster control, and this card gain 1800 attack until the end of the turn. If this card is sent from the field to the grave, you can add a Dark Contract card from your deck to your hand. So it's basically Solemn Judgment. It's Solemn Judgment, and it gains 1800 attack, which is pretty cool. It's pretty good. And then of course, Gilgamesh. Abyss King Gilgamesh. This card basically allows you to set the pendulum scale, so you want to try and go for this first if possible. So you can go into so you can basically set Divine King, so you can set Divine Zero King Rage and Savant Kepler to your pen zone, and you're off to the races there, which is just absolutely nuts. Moving on into the side deck, we have two copies of Nibiru. Not much else to say about Nibiru. It just says, fuck you, fuck your board. I'm gonna wipe it out and leave it be. Two copies of Joel and Lockbird. Your opponent is gonna try to add a card. So this acts as sort of like a, this acts sort of like a Max C of sorts, where your opponent has no choice but to do nothing, basically. Two copies of Ash Blossom, self-explanatory. Now for the other fusion that I had mentioned. It is known as Triple D Dragonbane King Beowulf. If you guys have never seen this card before, its effect reads if a DD monster you control attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing down battle damage to your opponent. Once per turn, during your standby phase, you can destroy all cards in the spell and trap zones. It basically is a heavy storm for the deck, which is just absolutely insane. Speaking of storms, we have two copies of Lightning Storm, self-explanatory there, don't need to say anything. Two copies of Exceed's Import, mainly for the Wave High King Caesar, because that you don't have any 6-star monsters in the main deck, except for obviously the Genghis. Baphomet is basically the only way you can get it to a level 6, and if you have Genghis on the field, Caesar is you can go into Caesar, but you're mainly summoning Caesar off of Doom King Dark Armageddon, and Exceed's Import will really come into play right there. And then to round out the whole deck itself, we have two copies of Vimperm, not much else to say about that. Dark Contract with Errors. This card is basically a Jinzo for the deck. So its effect reads, once per turn, if you control a double D monster if you control a double D monster, you can negate all traps on the field, all trap card effects on the field, other than this card. For the rest of this turn, even if this card leaves the field, once returned during the standby phase, take 1,000 damage. So again, it's basically Jinzo for the deck, which is pretty cool. And then Dark Contract with the Witch to round out the whole deck itself. So its effect reads, you can send one Double D or Dark Contract card from your hand to the graveyard, then target a card on the field and destroy it. You can only use this effect once per turn. All Fiend-type monsters you control gain 1,000 attack during your opponent's turn only. Once returned during your standby phase, take 1,000 damage. So basically, it's basically a way to remove your opponent's problematic cards while setting up your board as well, which is just absolutely insane. But that will do it for this deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are new to the channel and you guys want to see more deck profiles in the future, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you guys do not miss out on any new content that comes your way. And be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. All the links will be down in the description below. And if you guys have any family you want to send me and want me to open up on the channel, my address will also be in the description as well. And on that, this is your boy Nash, signing out.